Hello everyone, welcome back to Ansarkari. So continuing with our topic of capital market in India. In the previous video, we've talked about the difference between the money market and the capital market. So today in this part, we'll be covering the history of Indian capital market, when was it started and what has been the journey. So Indian stock markets are one of the oldest in Asia, and the history dates back to nearly 200 years ago. So you can imagine the introduction was done 200 years back. And the earliest records of security dealings in India, it was meager and obscure. Basically, we don't have the exact, we can say, proof or evidences when were for the very first time securities were issued. And stock market particular can be traced back to 1861. So capital market की बात करें, stock market, so 1861 से we can trace the beginning when the American Civil War actually began. Opening of Suez Canal during 1860s, it led to tremendous increase in exports to the UK and United States. Several companies they were formed during this period. Many banks they also came to the fore. So we can say कि again industrial revolution also played an important role when we saw that more banking institutions were set up and the trade was increasing. And so with that, actually we required more finances, so more securities would have been issued back then, and this concept of stock market emerged. So with many of these registered, they were under the British Companies Act, and the stock exchange Mumbai, it came into existence in 1875. So you can imagine how old is BSC. It saw the beginning from 1875. So we definitely have some colonial influence as well. So it was unincorporated body of stock brokers. So इससे पहले आज के टाइम में तो it happened so easily कि आप फोन के थ्रू भी ट्रेड और इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हो, but back then it happened in physical form only. So your physical presence in the exchange was important, and there one basically we can say one representative used to announce ki this is the price now, and physical slips on papers they were issued if you actually wanted to trade or you want to invest. So this you can have more clarity. You can watch few movies also like we have on this concept. And so you can say the business actually started under a banyan tree. So that's how it has grown today in such a huge with such a huge valuation. So business was essentially confined to only company owners and brokers. There was no such transparency as it is today. And even the general public was not so aware or so interested into the stock market. They were not so aware, they were not clear about what actually happens, what is the purpose behind that. So it was concerned only with, we can say, the big corporates and the company owners and brokers. They were interested into it. So there has been much fluctuations also in the stock market on account of the American war also and the battles in Europe. So this is one, we can say, that's why it is highly risky also, that fluctuations can also happen within seconds if you can make huge amounts of profits within seconds. So both the things are true. And so Premchand Roychand, he remained the kingpin for many years. So we can just remember his name, Premchand Roychand. So Indian capital market before and after independence, what has been the performance, the journey, how is the size increased, what has been the challenges that we have faced throughout this time. So before independence, Indian capital market was not properly developed before independence, because again we had the colonial influence and it was their dominance how the capital market functioned back then. So growth of industrial securities market, this was very much hampered since then, because very few companies were there who were successful and they could actually issue their shares. Number of securities traded in the stock exchanges, they were still smaller. So initially obviously the size would be smaller, and most of the British enterprises in India, they look to the London capital market for the funds than to the Indian capital market, because the situation of Indian economy was not, we can say, it did not boosted that much of confidence when we talk about the investors. So they were more interested into the companies of London, and that's why they invested in the London capital market. So large part of the capital market consisted of the gilt-edged marker. So this is again very important term, gilt-edged securities, which we use for government securities. So government security also known by this term. And for the government and the semi-government securities, it is mentioned also. So post-independence, when we say planning process started in India 1951, with the importance being given to the formation of institutions in the markets. So as we know that if we follow the planned model of economic growth and development, 5-year plans were the model that we adopted. So even capital market, restructuring and reforms were a part of those plans. So it was very important indicator for the growth of the capital market, the growth of joint stock companies which started emerging and the corporate enterprises. So this acted as an indicator how the Indian economy was also growing when we talk about the growth of the capital market in India. So 1950s, maybe we had the Century Textiles, we had Tata Steel, Bombay Dyeing, National Rayon. These are certain examples that we can cite. Kohinoor Mills. They were the favorite scripts of the speculators. So speculation भी बहुत ज़्यादा होती है in the stock market. Again, high risk and high volatility because of this. And again we say कि अगर आप initial investor हो, initial beginner हो, initial आप trading just start किए, तो you should go for blue chip stocks. So blue chip stocks are those जो जिनमें we can say liquidity बहुत ज़्यादा है, जिसमें number of traders and investors are high, plus their performance is also stable and sustainable. They can be relied. इसमें आपको if you don't know the specific nitty-gritties कि आपको अल्फा बीटा और थीटा ये सब देखना पड़ता है, आपको पी रेशियो देखना पड़ता है, प्राइस टू अर्निंग्स रेशियो देखना पड़ता है, अगर आपको इनके बारे में क्लैरिटी नहीं है तो यू कैन गो फॉर इन्वेस्टमेंट एंड ट्रेडिंग इन द ब्लू चिप स्टॉक्स. सो अगर आप गूगल भी करोगे इंडिया में, सो यू विल गेट द एग्जांपल्स आल्सो जो इंडिया में ब्लू चिप कंपनीज हैं. सो इसका एक एग्जांपल क्या आप दे सकते हो औशिक एंड प्रेरणा, ब्लू चिप कंपनीज इंडिया में, लाइक बैंक से भी हो
रिलायंस,
सकती है. हाँ, रिलायंस हो गया, राइट. रिलायंस इंडस्ट्रीज के नाम से.
HDFC बैंक.
HDFC बैंक, हाँ, जिनको हम बोलते हैं these are too big to fail. So as speculation became rampant, the stock market came to know as the सट्टा बाजार. So again, जिन लोगों को clarity नहीं है actually कि कितना important है stock market एक economy के functioning के लिए, you can just imagine कि अगर stock market नहीं होगी इंडिया में, so what would be the condition of Indian economy? How will be able to function जिस तरीके से हम आज function कर रहे हैं. तो कुछ लोगों, if we talk about the common people, वो इसको आज भी सट्टा बाजार ही बोलते हैं कि यहाँ पे सट्टा बाजार है, यहाँ पे रिस्क बहुत ज्यादा है या हमेशा लॉस ही होता है, which is again not true 100%. Then talking about Act, so Securities Contract Regulation Act 1956, and this became the parent regulation after Indian Contract Act of 1872. So before that we had this act. So this was the basic law to be followed by the security markets in India. So we kept reforming the acts, we have the laws, and to regulate the issue of the share prices, Controller of Capital Issues Act was passed in 1947. So इशू प्राइस जो होगा शेयर्स का फॉर द वेरी फर्स्ट टाइम, उसके पीछे क्या फैक्टर्स रहेंगे. जब कंपनी अपने आईपीओज इशू करती है तो जो शेयर इशू हो रहे हैं उसका प्राइस क्या होगा, वो आप कैसे डिटरमाइन करोगे. तो उसके लिए वी हैड दिस प्रॉपर इंस्टीट्यूशनल मेजर एज अ पार्ट ऑफ दिस एक्ट which was passed during the time period of independence. So these trends they were aggravated on forward trading. So यहाँ पे हम फॉरवर्ड ट्रेडिंग की बात करेंगे एंड इसको हम बदला सिस्टम भी बोलते हैं. टेक्निकली वी कॉल देम एज कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स फॉर क्लियरिंग. सो फॉरवर्ड ट्रेडिंग में वी डू ट्रेडिंग ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ अ प्री डिटर्मिन्ड प्राइस. वी नो कि इस एक पर्टिकुलर टाइम पीरियड के बाद प्राइस हमने आज डिसाइड कर लिया, तो उसको हम बोलते हैं फॉरवर्ड्स या फ्यूचर्स भी बोल सकते हैं जो आज हम टर्म यूज करते हैं. तो प्राइस इज प्री डिटर्मिन्ड. सो आफ्टर द कंप्लीशन ऑफ टाइम पीरियड उसी प्राइस पे ट्रांजैक्शन होगा जो आपने आज डिसाइड किया है. तो उसमें यह है कि जो रिस्क है वो कम हो जाता है, बट समटाइम्स इट माइट बैकफायर ऑल्सो कि कुछ फेवरेबल चीज होगी तो आपके फेवर में वो एक्चुअली नहीं हो पाएगा क्योंकि प्राइस आपने पहले डिटरमाइन कर लिया एज अ पार्ट ऑफ फॉरवर्ड. सो फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक LICs, लाइफ इंश्योरेंस कॉर्पोरेशन और GIC, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट इंस्टीट्यूशन है. जनरल इंश्योरेंस कॉर्पोरेशन, दे हेल्प रिवाइव द सेंटिमेंट बाय इमर्जिंग एज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट ग्रुप ऑफ इन्वेस्टर्स. सो दीज आर एग्जांपल्स ऑफ इंस्टीट्यूशनल इन्वेस्टर्स. सो जब इन इंस्टीट्यूशंस ने हेविली इन्वेस्ट करना स्टार्ट किया, पीपल्स कॉन्फिडेंस टू इंक्रीज, और ये जो जनरल सेंटिमेंट था कि सट्टा बाजार है वो चेंज होने लग गया. देन वी टॉक अबाउट फेरा एक्ट 1978 में लेके आए थे, एंड रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स दे बिगैन पार्टिसिपेट इन द स्टॉक मार्केट. रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स कौन से क्या होते हैं, मतलब आप इसको कैसे डिफाइन करोगे औशिक?
स्मॉल इन्वेस्टर्स, इंडिविजुअल स्मॉल इन्वेस्टर्स,
हाँ, लाइक
जैसे
यू
हम
एंड
लोग हो
मी.
गए.
हाँ, यू एंड मी.
Yes.
स्टूडेंट्स हो सकते हैं, टीचर्स, मतलब पीपल फ्रॉम एनी प्रोफेशन हु आर नॉट लाइक एक्सपर्ट्स नहीं है इतना. So multinational companies with operations in India, they were forced to reduce the foreign shareholding to below a certain percentage. तो यहाँ पे हमने restrictions लाना start कर दिया कि जो multinational companies हैं वो कितना Indian market में कितना share, कितनी holding actually कर सकते हैं. So this led to compulsory sale of shares and issuance of fresh stock after this imposition. तो अगर suppose इस limitation से ज़्यादा अगर उनकी holding थी तो they had to dilute that. So Indian investors who applied for जो भी shares फिर बाकी issue किए गए, they encountered a real lottery because those were the days जब हम बात करें CCIs, they decided the price at which shares could be issued. So उस टाइम पे लॉटरी इसलिए थी क्योंकि ये बहुत अच्छी बेस्ट परफॉर्मिंग कुछ कंपनीज थी जिसमें मल्टीनेशनल कंपनीज ने इन्वेस्ट किया हुआ था एंड वो शेयर लोगों के लिए अवेलेबल हो गए. तो दे गॉट दैट अपॉर्चुनिटी टू इन्वेस्ट इन दोज काइंड ऑफ शेयर्स. नेक्स्ट बिग बूम एंड मास पार्टिसिपेशन रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स का हमें देखने को मिला in 1980 when we saw the entry of Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani. मतलब we're talking about entry of Reliance. So Reliance Industries हैं and अभी हमने ऑफलेट देखा था कि जियो ऑल्सो पार्ट ऑफ रिलायंस इंडस्ट्रीज ही है. एंड रिलायंस फाइनेंस की भी हम बात करें कि आई थिंक उसका भी डिफरेंटली शेयर इशू किया गया. सो धीरूभाई, ही कैन बी सेड टू बी द फादर ऑफ मॉडर्न कैपिटल मार्केट्स इन इंडिया. एंड वीपी सिंग्स फिस्कल बजट 1984 का was path breaking, started the era of liberalization. So 1990s में we had the structural reforms and removal of estate duty was done. Like अगर हम बात करते हैं टैक्सेस कौन से इम्पोज किए जाते हैं तो STT, सिक्योरिटी ट्रांजैक्शन टैक्स इज इम्पोज्ड. Then long-term capital gains tax, this is also imposed on the returns which you actually make after investment and trading. So यहाँ पे भी like categories हैं, we'll go into the detail. 1990s में we saw the rise in leasing company shares when hundreds of companies they were listed in Gujarat. So gradually बहुत सारी companies list होना start हो गई BSE पे. 1990s में we had NSE system जो National Stock Exchange came to existence. साथ ही साथ 1990s में एक स्कैम भी रिवील हुआ बिकॉज ऑफ इनएडिक्वेसी एंड इनएफिशिएंसी इन द फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम. सो उस टाइम तक जो स्टॉक मार्केट कैपिटल मार्केट थी वो फिजिकली फंक्शन कर रही थी. अभी तक हमने कोई ऐसा डिजिटल मेजर डिजिटल टेक्नोलॉजी का यूज नहीं किया था. तो उसकी वजह से वी हैड these scams. So it was a scam which prompted a reform of the equity market. तो उस टाइम पे समझ में आया कि कुछ रिफॉर्म्स करने की जरूरत है. And it has definitely changed in terms of technology and the market prices. So like if you have a demat account, तो suppose आप निफ्टी बैंक निफ्टी का अगर आप स्टॉक ओपन करते हो, चार्ट ओपन करते हो, तो यू गेट दी ऑप्शन कि आप वन मंथली अगर आप चार्ट ओपन करते हो तो आपको देखने को मिलेगा कि जब से बैंक निफ्टी इंडेक्स स्टार्ट हुआ है वो सिर्फ ऊपर ही गया है ना. ये फैशन हो सकता है ऑफ गोइंग अपवर्ड्स बट इट हैज कंसिस्टेंटली गोन अप ओनली. इवन मतलब अगर सपोज 2008 फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस आई तो एक शार्प ड्रॉप होगा बट स्टिल उस लेवल से भी इट हैज गॉन अप. जैसा कि हमने अगेन कोविड-19 में भी देखा 2020 में शार्प फॉल आया बट उसके बाद जो उसका जंप था इट वाज मैसिव. सो इंडियन स्टॉक मार्केट इज चेंज इन टर्म्स ऑफ टेक्नोलॉजी एंड मार्केट प्राइस इस सेंस में, मतलब मार्केट प्राइस कंसिस्टेंटली ऊपर ही गया है. So this period also coincided with the dot-com bubble USA में हुआ था. Software companies being the most favored stocks at that point of time, and there was a meltdown in the software stocks also 2000 के decade में. Apart from this, markets that recovered since then and sustained rally took the index to over 21,000 during the year 2008. रिटेल पार्टिसिपेशन बहुत लिमिटेड था बट कंसिडरिंग उस टाइम पे हमारी सेविंग्स भी कम थी तो इसलिए पार्टिसिपेशन कम था. एंड इन्वेस्टर्स हु होल्ड द शेयर्स इन म्यूचुअल फंड्स यूनिट्स ऑफ लेट अगेन हमें म्यूचुअल फंड यूनिट्स में बहुत ज़्यादा इन्वेस्टमेंट देखने को मिली है. सो वी हैव सीन 3.5 crores was the shares in mutual fund which are held by the mutual fund जो 2.5% total population का इसमें है. So those who participated in secondary markets 36% of total population. So recent time में capital market performed really well, fairly integrated है, mature है, more global है. When you again talk about ADRs और GDR की हमने बात करी थी. American depository receipts, global depository receipts. So we as Indians, we can invest in GDRs also. So the global also. And emerging market bond index में भी इंडिया के कुछ शेयर्स हैं जो उसका पार्ट बनाए गए हैं. So that also reflects we are going global. Indian capital market is one of the best in the world in terms of the technology. Online trading is becoming a global phenomena. So online technology की वजह से we have also seen कि इंडिया एक फेवर्ड और मोर अट्रैक्टिव मार्केट देखी गई है. सो उसकी वजह से वी हैव बीन सीइंग foreign capital inflow also. Depression was witnessed after the independence and led to the closure of lot of exchanges also. So ये नहीं था कि मतलब starting से we have been going towards बीच में ऐसे hiccups आते गए. And Lahore Stock Exchange भी था, it closed down after the partition of India. And later on it was merged with the Delhi Stock Exchange. Bangalore Stock Exchange tha, it was registered 1957 and got recognition by 1963. And exchanges that were recognized and tagged, they are Bombay, Calcutta, Madras. So ये different बहुत सारे exchanges थे जो पहले function करते थे. So और examples अगर हम देखें 1980s में कितने सारे stock exchanges establish किए गए. So these are the examples. जयपुर, भुवनेश्वर, मतलब हर region में we can say stock exchange exist किया. Indian capital market at the time of global crisis. So this will take up in the next part. So that's all. यहाँ पे पूरा हमने हिस्ट्री और क्या हमारी जर्नी रही उसको डिस्कस किया. एज अ पार्ट ऑफ रिफॉर्म डिस्कस किया. .com स्कैम हुआ था जो यूएसए का था. एंड वी कैन टेक अप द डाउट्स इफ एनी.
No much.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining and Sarkari. Stay tuned for informative and detailed analysis videos on GS3 economy.